The story begins in a completely devastated place, with several fallen figures scattered across the wooden floor. In the midst of this scene, a man in black walks, stepping over one of the fallen enemies on the ground. Then we see the scale of what happened, as our character took down dozens of opponents all by himself. He then grips the hilt of his sword tightly, preparing for the last remaining enemy. In front of him is the big boss of the place, who stares at him with a serious look, but without fear of the swordsman. The big guy then lets out a little laugh, as if he doesn't care about the situation around him. With a cold gaze, our avenger asks if the man's name happens to be Beyond Gak. Surprised, the man questions how the young man before him knows his name. The young man then replies that he figures his opponent doesn't remember him. He says he understands why, since many people passed through the Jumo fortress. But he says he still feels a little hurt and has waited a long time for this day. At that moment, Big Gak realizes that if the young man passed through there, he must have been a prisoner. Thinking this, he decides he needs to find a way out quickly, because things have gotten ugly. His look of confidence vanishes instantly, replaced by desperation. However, the protagonist charges toward him at an incredible speed, giving him no time to escape. And with a single swift strike, the young man makes a cut on his opponent's shoulder. The swordsman then tells him not to turn his back, as he is still talking to him. Right after, he warns that his arms and legs are next and tells him to remember 12 years ago. Beyond Gak is shocked and wonders if the young man was a guard from the Unseong escort agency. The only answer he gets is a cold, hate-filled gaze from the protagonist. Then we are shown a memory from 12 years ago, where several men were captured. In it, we see a younger version of the protagonist in chains, being held as a prisoner. One of the enemies then heats a dagger in the fire with a wicked smile on his face. He approaches the boy and presses the hot blade to his chest, injuring him badly. The young man can't contain the pain and lets out a desperate scream because of the wound. Back in the present, the swordsman unleashes all his anger on his enemy with a flurry of strikes. Beyond Gak is terrified by the strength and speed of the attacks he is receiving. The protagonist then lands a finishing blow on his adversary, who screams in pain. Even so, the swordsman doesn't stop and continues attacking his enemy without any mercy. Finally, he asks one last question, asking if the villain remembers the name Sama Jian. Followed on the floor, the villain asks what the swordsman is talking about, as he doesn't understand a thing. The protagonist then reveals that 12 years ago, he was captured and sold into servitude by that man. At that moment, the big guy's memory returns, and he finally remembers what happened. Desperate, he starts to apologize, begging for his life and saying he was wrong. But the young man tells him not to dare forget the porter he sold into servitude. With that, he attacks his enemy again with a final blow while revealing his name. The young man then shouts with all his rage that his name is Samajian. And with that, a large amount of red mist sprays in all directions. The blow was so powerful that it put a final end to the man's time. After his revenge, Samajian stands still, observing his enemy on the ground. He then sheathes his sword, as his work there is finally done. His face shows a sense of relief for finally having accomplished what he wanted for so long. Looking at the scene, he says this will be the last time he gets his hands dirty, and that now he will live a normal life. Suddenly, a large explosion occurs in another part of the fortress, catching his attention. Amid the smoke, we see the silhouette of a large, strong man who appears to be an ally. Soon after, a young man appears and shouts for his boss, who is our protagonist. He then announces that all the prisoners have been freed and walks toward his leader. Samajian congratulates him on a job well done, and the young man asks how it felt to get his revenge. The young man says he can't believe his boss was once in servitude, but Samajian says it wasn't that satisfying. Looking around, he notices that the master of the fortress isn't there, but says he'll take care of it later. His companion then asks if they are now heading to the protagonist's hometown. The swordsman looks up at the night sky and says yes, as he can finally go home. He reflects that the bloody path of the #1 sword of the demonic way ends here. We then see the fortress at night as snow begins to fall slowly from the sky. The scene then changes to a sunny day with a blue sky and a few white clouds. Now we see the protagonist and his companion walking through a lush green field. Samajian asks if he's sure he wants to follow him, but the young man says he has nowhere else to go. The young man says his earliest memory is of training in the demonic cult, and that leaving feels like a dream. Samajian agrees with his friend and says he still can't believe any of it is real. Finally, we see an image of the place where they trained, which appears to be a large, ancient temple. The story flashes back to the past, showing our protagonist entering an important location. His face is serious, and he seems to be heading to a very important meeting. Inside is instructor Guanhayo, the demonic cult, who observes him with an intimidating gaze. Samajian stands still in front of his master, who is seated at a table with 2 guards. The young man then greets his instructor while clenching his fist tightly. Guanhayo glares at him with a look of contempt, as if he dislikes the young man's presence. He then begins to pour a drink into a cup, which appears to be some kind of rice wine. The instructor says he was hoping the young man wouldn't come to this meeting. In a gesture of disrespect, he throws the drink on the floor right in front of his disciple. The liquid flies toward the protagonist, who just watches the scene without moving. He then picks up the cup from the floor, to the surprise of his master, who didn't expect that. Unbothered by the humiliation, our character drinks all the liquid from the cup. Guanhayo then mentions a promise the great leader of the cult made to them in the past. He said that if they dedicated 10 years to the demonic clan, they would be set free. Samajian says that those 10 years have long passed and that he has fulfilled his part. The instructor just listens to the young man's words with a mocking look on his face. He then says that even though the demonic factions have unified, things are far from perfect. But the swordsman reveals that the condition was to overthrow the 10 Supremes who controlled the factions. And he adds that they all knelt before the cult leader, and his master agrees. The instructor is silent for a moment as he thoughtfully takes a sip of his drink. In his thoughts, he remembers that of all the children raised, Samajan was the most remarkable. However, he wasn't always the best. In terms of martial arts, he was weaker than Xiao Wu. But everything changed after he returned from the mission to destroy the Ghost Gate sect. His killer aura completely disappeared, and his entire vibe changed after that day. His martial arts reached a level that is beyond his master's imagination. The instructor then wonders what on earth happened to him in that place to change him so much. Back in the present, Samajian apologizes to his master for some unknown reason. Guanhayo tells him to save his empty words and crushes the cup in his hand in anger. He says it may have been a terrible fate for the young man, but for him, meeting him was a blessing. The master finishes by saying he will never forget his contributions as the protagonist passes out. Before losing consciousness, the protagonist thanks his master for everything he has done. As the young man turns to leave, the instructor tells him to take care of himself. One of the guards gets angry and tries to attack the swordsman, but his master stops him at once. The guard is furious with the situation but can do nothing against his superior's orders. With that, Samajian leaves the room behind and is finally free to go his own way. Outside, his companion was waiting for him in hiding so they could leave that place together. The big guy says goodbye to the suckers and wonders if his family will still recognize him. Back in the present, his friend points to a giant tree at the top of a hill. Surprised, Samajian recognizes the place and says that the tree is a guardian deity. He explains that every year, his parents and the village elders would gather there to perform a ritual. With a smile on his face, he touches the tree and says he's finally back home. His companion then teases him, saying he thought his boss was born a stone statue. Suddenly, a voice catches the protagonist's attention, and he turns to see who it is. It was 3 small children who were standing there, curiously observing the 2 outsiders. One of the boys then shouts that outsiders are not allowed to touch that sacred tree. The swordsman smiles and says he's not an outsider and asks if they are from the Peach Blossom village. The children are surprised and question how he knows the name of the village they live in. He replies that the tree is the guardian deity and that he used to live there when he was a child. The little ones look at him with suspicion, not quite believing the stranger's words. The young man then points and describes the way to his old house to prove he's telling the truth. He smiles confidently, hoping the children will finally believe him. But one of the girls shouts at him not to lie, because she knows very well whose house that is. Samajian is confused by their reaction and wonders why they think he's lying. They explain that the house actually belongs to a boy named A-Do, and that he doesn't have a father or an older brother who looks like a mountain bandit. One of the girls even says he's too ugly to be the uncle of this A-Do kid. The big guy gets annoyed by the children's insults, and they run away scared of him. Samajian becomes thoughtful, repeating the name A-Do as he had never heard it before. Meanwhile, his friend takes the opportunity to pick a peach from a nearby tree. As he bites into the fruit, he is amazed and says he now understands why the village is named that. His friend offers a peach to the boss, but he refuses with a serious look on his face. The scene then shows us a beautiful landscape with a small house near a lake. Samajian walks toward the place and says that this is the house he dreamed of so much. Looking at his old home, he realizes that everything is still exactly the same. His companion then asks if this is it, and the protagonist confirms with a smile. As they get closer, a voice from inside the house asks who's there. The swordsman tenses up as he didn't expect someone to be living in his house. An elderly man then appears at the door and stares at the two with a suspicious look. Soon after, several villagers join him to see what's happening. In the middle of the crowd is the little girl they met earlier near the tree. The gentleman then says that this is A-Do's house and asks what they want there. Samajian gets annoyed and says that this is his family's house and that they have lived there for generations. Upon hearing this, the man stares at him and asks if he happens to be Mr. Jang. The young man is surprised and confirms that he is Mr. Jang from the village chief's house. But the villager is confused and asks who the young man is, as he doesn't recognize him. The protagonist then grabs the man's hands tightly in a gesture of happiness. He introduces himself as Samajian and says he used to live in that house a long time ago. The gentleman is shocked and wonders if he's the little boy who disappeared all those years ago. The swordsman confirms that it's him, and the man can't believe what he's seeing. To prove it, he shows a scar on his forehead and says a boy gave it to him with a rock. At that moment, the gentleman's memory returns, and he finally remembers the young man before him. Emotionally, the man hugs him tightly while calling him a rascal and starts to cry. He then asks where he has been and what happened during all this time. Later that night, the two sit down to talk and catch up. Mr. Jang asks if he is really the Jian who disappeared 12 years ago on a mission. The young man says that the gentleman warned him several times that the escort mission was dangerous. The man says that everyone thought he had passed and that he was very determined. He then asks how the young man has been during all these years away from home. Samajian is silent for a moment as he remembers everything that happened. The scene then shows us a flashback of a bloody war with fallen soldiers everywhere. We then see a memory of Samajian in a bloody battle, wearing a mask. Amid the chaos of war, the young man screams in pain and rage as he fights for his life. Before him is the last enemy he needs to defeat to finally be free. It was the heavenly demon of the Northern Sword, a legendary and very powerful warrior. The man says he scoffed at the fools who wanted to unite the demonic way under a new cult, but he admits that the rumors of them defeating the 10 strongest were true. The protagonist then faces him and says he is the last one left for him to complete his mission. With a determined look, he thinks that if he can win, he will be a free man. The enemy warrior laughs and challenges him to try his luck if he is able to defeat him. He then advances, saying that if the young man wins, he will be the strongest in the demonic cult. With that, the two clash in an epic battle, their swords ringing out. The opponent is hit and is surprised by the force of the blow he received from the young man. With a powerful attack, our swordsman throws him back with incredible force. Amid the smoke, the warrior coughs, showing that he was seriously wounded in the fight. He then kneels on the ground, unable to stand after that blow. The man admits he didn't expect the young man to be as strong as he proved to be. The protagonist then approaches his defeated enemy to finish the fight once and for all. With a sigh of relief, the young man realizes that his long journey is finally over. Looking at the sunset, he reflects that everything has finally come to an end after so long. Back in the present, Samajian says that Mr. Jang wouldn't believe it even if he told him. He summarizes by saying he was sold to mercenaries and wandered around until he could return. The young man then changes the subject and asks where his family went after he disappeared. Mr. Jang reveals that the young man's younger siblings left for a place called Suhong. The protagonist is surprised to hear the name of that place as he didn't expect it. The man explains that it's been 6 years and that they held on for as long as they could on their own. The scene then shifts to the two walking through the village at night under the moonlight. With a sad look, Mr. Jang begins to talk about what happened to the young man's mother. He then reveals the tragic news that Samajian's mother passed away the previous year. Devastated by the news, the protagonist goes to the top of a mountain to be alone. There he weeps desperately, saying he committed an unforgivable sin against his mother. Remembering his family, the young man kneels and wonders how he can be forgiven for his impiety. The scene takes us to Sohom, a bustling village but with a very simple and humble appearance. There, the protagonist and his friend arrive at a small house that seems to be their final destination. The swordsman then looks at the place with a sad face, for his family living in such a place. His companion notices his nervousness and teases him, asking if the boss is scared. He says it's been a while since he's seen him like this, as he usually walks into enemy territory without fear. The friend then pushes him toward the door and tells him to just open it, but it's not that easy. The young man says he doesn't know how to face his siblings after all the suffering they went through, but his companion encourages him, saying that together they can buy a new house, and he hurries him along. Determined, Samajian raises his hand to knock on the door, thinking they will never be separated again. He then knocks on the door, and a voice from inside asks who is outside the house. The door opens, revealing a young woman who surprises them both as they didn't expect it. Emotionally, the young man holds her hand and says she has grown so much, trying to introduce himself. Suddenly, the protagonist realizes that there is something wrong with the girl in front of him. The young woman stares at him with a look of fear and seems to be feeling very unwell for some reason. He then senses a large amount of yin energy in her body and wonders what happened. The girl pulls her hand away forcefully and shouts for him to let her go, as she is very scared. She then stumbles and falls to the ground, leaving the swordsman shocked, not knowing what to do. Desperate, the young man tries to explain himself, but can't find the right words to say. At that moment, a young man appears and shouts at them, asking what they think they're doing. Our hero and his friend stand still as the young man runs to help the fallen girl. The young woman then calls him younger brother, and Samajian realizes who these people are. The young man gets angry and attacks the protagonist with a flying kick for touching his sister. Samajian defends himself easily and deduces that this young man must be his brother Ho. The boy introduces himself as Guango from the Concord Mine Association and prepares to fight. He then attacks the protagonist with several martial arts strikes but misses every attack. The swordsman grabs his brother's fist and thinks about how he and his sister Jin have grown up. Furious, Ho pulls out a dagger and threatens to end his older brother's time over this. But Samajian easily grabs his hand and stops the attack before it happens. Another young man appears and tells Ho to stop, as that is not the right behavior on the anniversary of their mother's passing. Hearing about the anniversary of their mother's passing, Samajian realizes this is his brother Hyan. Hyan then scolds Ho for drawing a dagger without knowing the situation and for joining a gang. Ho gets angry saying it's not a gang, but Hyan insists he leave while the protagonist thinks about how well they've grown. With a sigh of relief, the swordsman is happy to see that all his siblings are safe and sound. Seeing an open in his older brother's guard, Ho realizes this is his chance to attack. He then lunges with the dagger in hand to attack, but Hyan tries to stop him before he does something foolish. However, the protagonist's companion easily grabs his wrist, stopping the attack at once. The big guy's strength is so great that he manages to break the dagger's blade with just one hand. Shocked by the man's strength, Ho calls him a monster, but the big guy just smiles at the compliment. He then proudly introduces himself, saying he is the great Jumgang Yaka, all conceited. Hyan questions why someone so powerful would be robbing their house if he's so incredible. The big guy gets annoyed because first he was called a bandit and now a thief, and he doesn't like it. Seeing his friend's anger, the swordsman asks him to wait as the situation is getting out of control. He then turns to his siblings and tries to introduce himself, but can't find the right words. Ho gets scared, remembering that the protagonist mentioned the Blood Axe sect before. The protagonist is confused by his brother's reaction, as he doesn't understand the reason for so much fear. At that moment, a group of unfriendly-looking men approaches them menacingly. One of the newcomers says he's never seen those people around here before and eyes them with suspicion. The leader of the gang then approaches and asks who the heck they are and what they're doing there. He then gets close to the protagonist and questions him aggressively, wanting to know what's going on. Another member of the group approaches the big guy and asks what a giant like him is doing around here. Ho then points at them and says this is the association's territory and questions what they're doing there. The protagonist finally understands the situation and realizes that these are the men from the Blood Axe clan. The leader then reveals that they have decided to take over this place and asks who this Guanko person is. Furious, Ho says the monster wasn't enough, and now they've come to finish the job. The man then tells him to cooperate and let things end more peacefully. He flashes a wicked smile on his face, as if confident that everything will go as planned. However, the swordsman acts quickly and with a precise blow, strikes the neck of the man in front of him. The attack is so fast and accurate that the enemy doesn't even have time to react and falls to the ground, finished. The other members of the group are shocked by the scene and can't believe what they just saw. Furious, one of the men shouts for everyone to attack at once and finish them. The protagonist then turns to his friend Cheel, who asks him to finish them all. With a confident smile, the big guy says he got the message and prepares for the fight. The enemies charge all at once, but Cheel, who is not intimidated by the number of opponents. He then faces the adversaries with a fierce look and prepares to counterattack. In the blink of an eye, the big guy defeats all the enemies with incredible speed. After the fight, he says they were just a bunch of nobodies and were no match for him. Looking at the bodies on the ground, he wonders if he went a little overboard with the force he used. The protagonist's brothers are shocked to see that he defeated those bandits in an instant. The big guy then asks if they still think the two of them are on the same side as the villains. The swordsman approaches and says they are not bandits and calls his brothers by their names. He then shows the scar on his forehead and asks if they don't recognize him after so long. Hyen looks at the scar and realizes that the man in front of him is his older brother. With a smile on his face, the protagonist says yes, and that he has finally returned home. Overcome with emotion, Hyen hugs him tightly and says he's sorry for taking so long to come back. His siblings then ask what happened and where he has been all these years. Later, they gather inside the house to talk and catch up. Cheel, who says he likes the boy's attitude and that he reminds him of others who have served with them. Ho then asks why Cheel, who calls his older brother captain instead of brother. The big guy makes up a story, saying he owes his life to him, but it's all a lie. The protagonist reveals that he just doesn't like calling him brother, and that's the truth. Samajian then asks how everyone has been, and his sister begins to talk about her life. She reveals that she is working in an escort agency called Pearl C. The swordsman is surprised to hear the name of the agency, as he didn't expect it. His sister says she is learning the trade from the general manager Yuk, and that Mr. Jiang didn't tell him. The young man then asks if their mother was against her decision to work in that place. Hyen confirms that she was, and that their mother was much more against it than he imagines. Ho says it was the protagonist's fault because he disappeared while working as an escort. Hyen then scolds Ho for getting involved with the back alleys and says he has no moral ground to speak. Ho defends himself, saying he earns more money, but his brother says they don't need that money. Ho defends himself, saying he doesn't exploit anyone and that he's tired of repeating that they don't do that. Suddenly, their sister slams the food on the table, interrupting their argument. She then scolds them for arguing right when their older brother has returned after 12 years. In the middle of her sentence, the young woman stops talking and covers her mouth as if she feels sick. She then starts coughing, and her brothers rush to help her, worried about her health. Samajian holds his sister and notices that the yin energy in her body is too strong. Ho is surprised and asks how his older brother knows about his sister's condition. The protagonist then questions if they took her to a doctor and what the diagnosis was. Hyen explains that they went to every doctor in the region, but none of them knew what it was. He continues, saying that one of the doctors said the same thing as the swordsman about the energy. The young woman says she's fine and that the pain is more or less bearable, so as not to worry her brothers. She then gets up and goes to her room to rest and recover a bit. Hyen reveals that the reason they moved to Sohong was because of that doctor. Ho says she only manages to get by because of a medicine that replenishes her yang energy. Concerned about the situation, our hero asks if there is any cure for her illness. His brother replies that he doesn't know, but that it's possible to alleviate the symptoms, but it's very expensive. He says the money he earns is not enough to pay for his sister's treatment. With tears in his eyes, he admits he wouldn't stand a chance if it weren't for the money Ho gets. Seeing his brother's desperation, the protagonist stands up to try to calm the situation. He then places a hand on Hyen's shoulder to show his support in that difficult moment. Samajian says that he has the right to worry and that the only one without that right here is him. He then tells them not to worry about the money, as they will see the doctor tomorrow. Hyen thanks his brother and asks him to rest, as he must be very tired. After the conversation, the young man leaves the room, leaving the protagonist alone with his friend. Chio Wu and the swordsman remain silent for a moment as the situation calms down. The big guy then fills a cup with a drink and says if he had known, he would have brought some. The protagonist asks what he would have brought, and his friend replies that it was the bandits' money. He says they had a great fortune, but the captain ordered them to leave it all behind. The young man explains that the money belongs to the people they captured and their families. Finally, he adds that he didn't want to touch that money, but the decision was the captain's. The big guy whispers that the sale of the item they took from the temple will be more than enough. He then asks how her condition is since the captain examined her, but he says he's not a doctor. The protagonist explains that her energy balance is broken and the yin energy is too strong. His friend suggests using the captain's yang energy to heal her, but Samajan says it's not that simple. He reveals that he tried to inject some energy, but it had no effect because there was no path for it to enter. Chio-u is confused and asks what that means, not understanding the gravity of the situation. With a serious look, the swordsman says that if they leave her like this, she will end up passing away soon. The next day, they all go to the doctor's clinic to try to find a cure for Gina. When they arrive, they are met with a huge line of people waiting to be seen. The protagonist is impressed by the number of people and says they arrived too late. He comments that the doctor must be as good as they say to attract such a large crowd. Ho says he is incredibly famous around there but asks them to wait a second. He then approaches a group of men who seem to be providing security for the place. Ho greets them and they seem to be part of the same association he works for. Chio-woo asks who they are, and Hein explains they are from the Concordant Mind Association. The protagonist's friend is confused by their humble attitude, as they seem to be security guards. Ho calls them pillars of the area but later admits they are just low-level pawns. The big guy then starts to laugh, saying that everyone needs to start somewhere in life. After the conversation, the group finally decides to enter the clinic for the consultation with the doctor. Chio-woo praises Ho's confidence and says they can go ahead to sort things out. Upon entering, they find a courtyard crowded with patients and doctors working non-stop. The swordsman is surprised by the size of the place and says he's never seen such a large clinic. Hyen comments that he has traveled a lot but has never seen a place like that outside of Soong. The protagonist reveals that it used to be just a room with a doctor named Sasoma. His friend is impressed and says he definitely doesn't seem like some random quack. Samajian then reflects that it's incredible to think that not even a doctor like him could cure his sister. One of the staff members recognizes Ho and says he is early for his scheduled appointment. The young man asks him to inform the doctor that they are there, as things have suddenly changed. The staff member agrees and leads them inside so they can wait for his master. They then enter a waiting room where several patients are waiting to be seen. The doctor appears and says he was surprised to hear they arrived early for the consultation. He then approaches Gina and asks if her condition has worsened, but Hyen says it hasn't. Ho explains that their older brother wanted to meet him, which is why they came early. The swordsman introduces himself as Samajian, and the doctor says he didn't know the family had an older brother. In his thoughts, the protagonist notices that the doctor seems to be a humble person. But he also senses that the man knows martial arts, which makes him suspicious. His friend Chio-woo agrees and says he's too good to be just a simple doctor. The swordsman then says that he definitely has some hidden skill behind that appearance. He explains to the doctor that he has been away for a long time and rushed here upon learning he was treating her. The doctor smiles and says he is glad he returned home safe and sound. He then begins to check the young woman's pulse to see how her condition is. All the brothers watch attentively as the doctor carefully performs his work. The man says her illness has always weighed on his heart and makes him reflect on his abilities. Hyen comforts him, saying it is thanks to him that his sister can lead a normal life. But the doctor reveals that all he has done is slow the progression to avoid the worst. Upon hearing this, the protagonist is startled and asks if the worst-case scenario is his sister's passing. The doctor then suggests using high-quality medicinal herbs for a more effective treatment. He explains that the herbs they are currently using are showing some positive results. The swordsman then asks what kind of herbs they need for his sister's treatment. The doctor says he has been using herbs with strong yang energy to neutralize her yin energy. He reveals that the main ingredient is the fire spirit herb and that he needs a more potent one. The doctor mentions a 1,000-year-old herb but says it's practically impossible to obtain. Samajian then asks if Cheongzim 1 has any in stock for them to buy. The doctor says no and that it would be dangerous for a place like that to possess a legendary elixir. The protagonist agrees. As for a martial artist, that is a treasure they would fight for. Without giving up, he asks where he can find the herb to save his sister. The doctor then asks if he has heard of the Suryo merchant group, and the young man confirms. He explains that a short time ago, the president's son contracted malaria, and they called him in a hurry. The doctor says he was shocked when the president showed him a rare medicinal ingredient. The swordsman asks if he used the ingredient in the treatment, but the doctor says no. The doctor explains that it would be a waste to use such a rare item to treat a common illness. He then reveals that the president joked about selling the ingredient since he didn't need it. Interested in the offer, the protagonist asks what price he asked for the rare item. The doctor says the president would sell the Gongcheong petroleum for 300 taels of gold. The swordsman's brothers are shocked by the amount, as it is a very high sum for them. Gina closes her eyes with sadness, knowing they will never be able to gather that much money. Hyen comments that a single tael of gold is enough for half a year's worth of medicine for them. Desperate, the protagonist asks if there is any way they can get the item on credit. Chio-woo says that the money they brought doesn't even come close to that absurd amount. The swordsman's brothers then ask what they plan to sell to get the money. The protagonist looks at his friend with a serious gaze and forbids him from talking about it. But Chio-woo ignores the warning and says he found something valuable while working as a mercenary. He reveals that he found a shiny stone that he discovered was worth a real fortune. The siblings are shocked to learn that the stone was valued at 400 taels of gold. With tears in her eyes, the young woman realizes that there is finally hope for her cure. The swordsman comforts her and tells her not to worry, as he will find a way to get it. He then turns to the doctor and asks him to arrange a meeting for the purchase of the item. The doctor agrees and says he will contact them immediately to expedite the process. The scene then takes us to the headquarters of the Suryong Merchant Group, a large and imposing place. Inside, several employees are working while the protagonist and his friend wait to be seen. The leader of the group then appears and says bluntly that they will not sell the item. Surprised by the answer, the swordsman asks him to repeat what he just said. The man then confirms that they will not be selling the Gongxiang Petroleum to them, no matter what. With a sarcastic smile, he asks if they got the message or if he needs to repeat it. The scene then repeats, showing the headquarters of the Suryong Merchant Group again. And once more, the protagonist and his friend are in the office waiting for the answer. Not understanding the refusal, the young man asks why they don't want to sell the item to him. The leader reveals that the offered price is not enough to cover the cost of the ingredient. The protagonist remains silent for a moment, processing the information he just received. He then asks if the man is taking him for a fool and tells him to appraise the item. The man confirms that the pearl is of high quality, and the protagonist questions the refusal. The leader is silent for a moment, with a serious and thoughtful look on his face. He then reveals that he never intended to sell the item, and just said that for the sake of saying it. The man asks if the swordsman didn't hear the reason why he brought the item in the first place. The young man says yes, and that he brought it for his son's malaria treatment. Chiel, who then explains that the bluestone oil is an elixir that can bring people back. The leader says that if the news spreads, they will become a target for all the vultures. That's why he kept the item's existence a secret and made the doctor swear to secrecy. The protagonist remains silent, as he knows the doctor is not the type to break a promise. The man assumes that he revealed the secret to try to save a patient in critical condition. With a serious look, the swordsman confirms that the patient in question is his younger sister. The leader says that since the secret is out, he needs to get rid of the item as quickly as possible. But he adds that a true merchant raises the price when the demand is desperate. With a weak smile, he reveals that the new price for the item is now 500 taels of gold. Outraged by the proposal, the protagonist remains silent, processing the man's greed. The leader then picks up the pearl and says it's of high quality but a bit small. He devalues the item, saying it would be difficult to get 400 taels for it. With a look of contempt, the swordsman says that at best, it's worth 300. The man then adds a fine for the breach of confidentiality and the increased demand. Furious Chiel Wu shouts that the old man is crazy and a total shameless scammer. He threatens to blow up the whole place, but the protagonist stops him before he does something foolish. The swordsman then turns to his friend and asks how much money they have at the moment. Chiel Wu calculates and says they have about 120 taels of gold with them. But the protagonist corrects him and says to round it down to 100 as they need money to live. He then faces the leader and asks what kind of men they seem to be to him. The man observes him and says he has the dignity of someone who has crawled through a bloodbath. The young man reveals that they walked the path of the demonic cult and took more lives than they can count. He then says he made a promise to leave that life behind and live a normal life. But he adds that his family is in peril and he can't afford to keep that promise. Finally, he asks what a man like him is capable of doing in a situation like this. The leader is silent for a moment, observing the determination in the young man's eyes. In his thoughts, he realizes that the young man is not lying and will do anything for his family. He then agrees to accept the offer but says that in return, he will have to help him with a request. Without hesitation, the protagonist accepts the deal to save his younger sister's life. The scene then shifts to a beautiful landscape with an orange sunset on the horizon. Later that night, the two friends camp in the forest and light a fire to keep warm. Chiel Wu says that if the boss hadn't stopped him, he would have finished off those scoundrels. The swordsman then apologizes to his friend for spending the money that belonged to both of them. But the big guy tells him not to worry, as they are talking about saving a life. He reveals that he only got annoyed by the way they tried to take advantage of the situation. Furious, he says he can't stand it and asks if he should go back and take the item by force. The protagonist scolds him, saying he shouldn't stay in his sister's medicine with conflict. Chiel Wu agrees with his boss and realizes he is right in his words. The young man reflects that they were taken and did what was necessary to survive. He says their hands are stained and that they did everything to unify the cult. But now that they have escaped, they need to abandon their old habits to fit into society. The swordsman explains that they need to play by the rules of the Miram world and the great clans. He then says that things ended well, as they saved enough for living expenses. His plan is to save Gina, find an honest job, and build a normal life together. He doesn't force his friend to stay and says he is free to leave whenever he wants. Chiel Wu apologizes and says he got carried away by emotion after everything they've been through. He comments that he can't just leave, especially when he thinks of their fallen comrades. The protagonist asks what kind of memories the situation is bringing back for him. The big guy then mentions the Gongxiang Petroleum he took from the Guiman clan and gave to him. The swordsman says there wasn't that much to begin with and that it was barely enough for his size. Chiel Wu laughs and says that thanks to it, he finally perfected his diamond body technique. He then sniffs the air and says he can smell blood from some punks nearby. The protagonist asks what the problem is, and his friend says he has a bad feeling. The young man then says there's only one way to find out what's happening there. Suddenly, they hear the sound of approaching horses and prepare for what's to come. In the dead of night, a group of armed horsemen speeds through the forest. They then surround the protagonist and his friend, who are fleeing from them on foot through the woods. The men dismount their horses and prepare for a confrontation with the two outsiders. The swordsman then says it seems things won't be as easy as he imagined. The enemies mock them, saying that for a bunch of beggars, they move pretty fast. The group's leader then suggests they start the fun by taking off the two's legs. The protagonist asks if they were following them, and the man confirms with a smile. He then tells them to hand over the goods and promises they will have a quick end. If they refuse, he threatens them, saying he will make them suffer the agonies of the underworld. The swordsman and his friend look at each other confused, as they don't know what the man is talking about. The enemy then reveals that he is after the item they took from the merchant group. The protagonist realizes that the group's leader broke his promise to keep the deal a secret. He then tells them to go away, as he has seen enough conflict for a lifetime. But the man says they followed them after confirming they took the pure stone oil. He reveals that his boss was worried the old man had already used it all himself. The other men mock them and say they better hand over the item once and for all. Chio, Wu gets annoyed with the insults and asks who they think they're to talk like that. The men laugh and say there's no harm in telling, as they're already done for anyway. One of them even says that answering a dying man's curiosity is the duty of a true hero. They then introduce themselves as the elite of the Thousand Assassins gang, which rules the Knights of Hangzhou. The group's leader gets annoyed with the chatter and tells them to shut up and get ready to fight. He then tells them to choose between a quick end or a pain worse than passing itself. Chio Wu mocks him and asks if he can't just be a pig instead. The man is shocked by the big guy's audacity and can't believe what he heard. Furious, he shouts that they dared to mock him and orders his men to attack. With eyes glowing with rage, he tells his men to give them a taste of the underworld. The henchmen then charge all at once, ready to attack the two at any moment. Chio Wu says it's not like they have anything worth going out for anyway. The protagonist then says it seems there's no choice and that he warned them to leave. The big guy cracks his knuckles and says he can tell they've taken a few lives before. The gang leader gets angry and threatens to tear out the arrogant young man's eyes and tongue. His henchmen then draw their swords and prepare to attack at any moment. The big guy challenges them to attack, but his boss stops him before the fight begins. Chio Wu asks him to wait a second, as something in the forest has caught his attention. The protagonist then asks what he saw, and his friend points to an approaching group. The big guy is surprised as he didn't expect anyone else to show up at that moment. A group of 3 people, a woman and 2 men, walks toward them through the woods. The 2 friends are confused, as the situation has become even more complicated with their arrival. The bandits also notice the group's presence and wonder what is happening there. The woman in the group comments that it seems they've found some merchants being robbed. She then approaches and asks if they need any help with the situation. The protagonist wonders who these people are and why they are offering help. The woman confirms that the men are members of Hangzhou's local underworld, and that they are dangerous. Chio Wu notices that the newcomers have some skills, and that they are high-level experts. The protagonist then reveals that the real expert there is the woman and asks her for a favor. He asks if she could please give them a hand with this complicated situation. The bandits then realize that the 3 newcomers are also a threat to them. The woman's guards prepare for the fight, and she threatens them, telling them to back down. She says that if they retreat now, she will let them go and forget everything that happened. The gang leader realizes they are from a high-ranking family, but what matters is the elixir. He then gets annoyed with the young woman's audacity and orders his men to attack all of them. The henchmen advance toward one of the guards, who prepares for combat. With a cold look, the man draws his sword and calls the enemies worms. He then throws the scabbard of his sword into the air and prepares to counterattack. In the blink of an eye, he defeats all the enemies with incredible and precise speed. The attack is so fast that the men don't even have time to react and fall to the ground. The henchmen scream in pain as the sword's scabbard falls back into the warrior's hand. All the enemies are defeated with a single blow from that mysterious man. One of the surviving henchmen calls for his boss, afraid of what just happened. The warrior then turns and shows his face, which is covered in dark spots. Chio Wu is impressed by the warrior's skill and praises him for his strength. The gang leader is furious at the defeat of his men and prepares to fight. Seeing that the situation has turned ugly, he leaps from his horse and charges toward the guard. The two then clash in a sword battle with sparks flying everywhere. The guard manages to dodge the enemy's attack and prepares to counter-attack with a strike. The other guard praises him, saying that if he had accepted his lady's mercy, he would have lived. The gang leader gets annoyed by the taunt and charges with all his strength to attack. The guard praises his strength, but he is no match for his skill with the sword. With a war cry, the man tries to land a blow, but his opponent is faster. The guard dodges with ease and lands a finishing blow on his adversary with his blade. The gang leader screams in pain as he is hit by the warrior's precise attack. He then falls to the ground finished, and the fight finally comes to an end with the guard's victory. The spotted man then asks his companion what took him so long to act. The other guard replies that the boss was a boss for a reason and that he wasn't that weak. He reveals that the other henchmen surrendered as soon as they saw some of their comrades fall. The man says he wanted to finish them all, but his lady ordered him to let them live. The protagonist then approaches and thanks them for saving their lives. The woman says it was only natural and that she is happy to be able to help in some way. The swordsman says he is in a hurry but would like to introduce himself to his saviors. She then tells them to go ahead and that they will take care of the bandits themselves. The young man introduces himself as Samajian and promises to repay the debt of gratitude. Chio Wu mocks his boss, saying his speech was a bit embarrassing to listen to. The woman comments that they are a strange pair and that they should have cleaned up the mess. But she remembers that they asked for her understanding and that she agreed to help them. Suddenly, she notices something strange about those two men and is surprised. Her guards ask what's wrong, and she reveals what she noticed was different about them. The woman says that those two men were not afraid of the situation they were in. Her men are confused and don't understand what she means by those words. She explains that even with all the chaos, they were not shaken for even a second. With a look of indifference, they just watched everything as if they were mere spectators. The scene opens at the clinic where the protagonist returns after obtaining the rare ingredient. He enters the doctor's room, which is filled with shelves of herbs and supplies. The swordsman then turns upon hearing a noise and sees the doctor approaching. The doctor eagerly asks if he managed to get the item for his sister's treatment. The young man confirms that he did and takes the package out of his bag to hand it to the doctor. The man feels ashamed for not having gone with them, but the protagonist comforts him. The doctor then asks about the young man's sister, as she is always with him everywhere. The swordsman replies that he sent her to get the youngest and that they should arrive soon. The doctor is taken aback by the response and doesn't know what to say in this situation. In his thoughts, the protagonist realizes that perhaps they were being too impatient. He then apologizes and says he was in a hurry because he wanted to start the treatment as soon as possible. But the doctor reveals there was another reason why he couldn't go with them to the group. The swordsman is confused and asks what he means by main family and who they are. The doctor is silent for a moment with a worried look on his face. He then asks if the young man has ever heard of the medical house of the living immortal. The protagonist is shocked and says it's the famous medical clan that can bring people back. He says he knew the doctor was amazing but didn't imagine he was from that family. The doctor reveals that because of Gina's unique condition, he consulted the main family several times. But unfortunately, they couldn't send anyone because of the various plagues in the region. With a hopeful smile, the swordsman asks if a doctor from the main family has finally arrived. The doctor confirms and says he agreed to examine Gina's condition after finishing his work. He praises the other doctor, saying he is one of the best and that his own skills are just a hobby. Happy with the news, the young man bows and thanks the doctor for his kindness and help. The man says he will return as soon as possible but can't say exactly when. The protagonist tells him not to worry, as they can wait as long as necessary. The doctor has a sad look and the swordsman asks if there is some kind of problem. In his thoughts, the doctor reveals that it's difficult to give a definitive answer about an illness. He then says everything is fine and that he will contact them as soon as he has news. The scene then shows us the family's house, where everyone eagerly awaits the treatment. Finally, we see the family gathered outside the house on a sunny and peaceful day. The family gathers for a meal, and the protagonist's siblings serve him with care. Hyan then asks where their sister is going, as she got up from the table. The young man replies that she is going to a place called Wuxi to take care of some business. The swordsman comments that the place is quite far from Hangzhou, but his brother says it's not a problem. He reveals that if nothing special happens, he should be back in about 15 days. The protagonist is silent for a moment, observing his brother with a serious look. He then says he wanted to talk about the porter job he has been doing. Hyan replies that he has no choice but to continue doing that job. But the swordsman warns him, saying it's very dangerous and that he himself only returned after 12 years. The young man says he started at 17 and that he can't be afraid of things that haven't happened yet. The protagonist then says he has some money saved and that he can live without being a porter. Hyan is surprised and asks if he didn't spend it all buying the stalactite essence. Chiel, Wu and Ho are startled by the revelation, as they didn't know he had more money. The big guy tries to play it off, saying the guy was asking too many questions and he got tongue-tied. Hyan asks why he is being like that with his friend, and if he wanted to hide the money. The swordsman then suggests they buy some rice fields to have an income. His siblings start arguing about what to do with the money they have. Chiel, Wu offers to get them a good location to start a business if they want. Ho doubts he has that much influence, but the big guy says he shouldn't underestimate him. Hyan then tells them not to rush and that they need to keep an eye on Gina's treatment. He then suggests that if the protagonist is so worried, he should work with him. But the swordsman says he's not sure about doing agency work again. His sister then advises him not to make a hasty decision and to think it over calmly. He agrees and says he will think it over, and that she should think about it too. Hyan agrees to think seriously about the matter, just as his older brother asked. With the discussion over, they can finally enjoy their family meal. The scene then shifts to a bustling city with many people walking through the streets. Chiel, Wu, and the protagonist walk through the city, and the big guy complains about how tough it is. He then suggests they take a short break, and the captain agrees with the idea. With that, the two decide to stop at a local restaurant to eat some dumplings. Chiel orders 2 plates of meat dumplings and asks if the restaurant sells alcohol. The owner says he doesn't sell alcoholic beverages, and the big guy just asks for the dumplings. He then asks his captain what they will do, as there's no suitable work for them. The protagonist agrees and says that after living by the sword their whole lives, it's not easy to find a job. His friend then suggests they try a business and ask Ho for a favor to get started. He says the young man should give his family a chance to hold their heads high at least once. But the swordsman refuses the offer and says he's going to get Ho out of that gang soon. He even mocks his friend, saying he doesn't have the personality to run a business. Chio-woo laughs and agrees with his captain, as he knows he has an explosive temper. The owner then arrives with the dumplings, and the protagonist says they should eat and think later. The scene focuses on the steaming dumplings, which look very delicious and well prepared. The big guy tries one and is amazed by their flavor. The protagonist also agrees and says they are much better than the ones they ate yesterday. He asks if the dumplings are made of pork, and the owner confirms that they are. The young man wonders if the other shop uses poor quality meat, as the difference is so great. The owner then boasts that no other shop uses such high-quality meat as theirs. Chio-woo asks if all pork is the same or if they use different cuts. The man explains that it's not about the cut, but about the person who butchered the animal. He adds that the method is the same, but the butcher's skill is different. Suddenly, the protagonist shouts for his friend to watch out for something approaching. The swordsman is on high alert, having sensed imminent danger nearby. A wild boar then charges toward Chio-woo, who prepares to defend himself. The animal falls to the ground, defeated by the big guy, who stands up to see what happened. The protagonist asks if he's okay, and his friend thanks him for the help in saving himself. With a smile on his face, he wonders where a pig like that came from out of nowhere. Several men then run toward the spot where the animal fell. They worriedly ask if the big guy is okay, as they saw the whole commotion. Chio-woo says he's fine, but their pig isn't as lucky. He then apologizes for finishing off the animal and asks if they aren't going to ask for compensation. The men are afraid of the big guy and kneel on the ground, not knowing what to do. An older man appears and shouts at his employees, calling them fools. He scolds them, saying they are pathetic and that this is the third time already. The elder says they shouldn't be apologizing to him, but to the two customers. The men then bow and apologize to the protagonist and his friend for the trouble. The old man apologizes and explains that the candidates let the pig they were holding escape. The swordsman is confused and asks what he means by candidates and who they are. The man reveals that he used to run the butcher shop and is looking for someone to replace him. The protagonist then asks if he was the one responsible for butchering the pig for the dumplings. The old man confirms that he was, and the young man is impressed by his skill with meat. He then asks to take a look at the butcher shop, and the man is confused by the request. The elder says there's nothing to see and that it's not a very pleasant sight. But the protagonist insists, saying it's not a very common sight to find either. The old man stares at him for a moment and realizes he is serious about the matter. He then agrees and tells them to do as they wish and takes them to the butcher's shop. The scene then shifts to an aerial view of the village with a blue sky and some white clouds. In the butcher shop, the man observes the pig on the floor and complains about his employee's incompetence. He says the fellow is useless because the customer had to do the work of catching the animal for them. The swordsman then asks why he thinks the slaughter was a complete failure. His employees try to guess and say that the placement of the pin was not right. The old man agrees with them, but says it was wrong from the start anyway. He explains that the top priority is to ensure the animal doesn't realize what is happening. The men mock him and ask how they would know, and if he wants them to communicate with them. The old man is silent for a moment with a look of disapproval on his face. He then approaches a pig that is eating peacefully from a bowl. The elder tells them to watch closely and kneels beside the animal. He then positions the pin on the pig's head without it noticing what is happening. The employees are shocked because the animal went crazy just by looking at the pin before. The old man explains that the pig didn't sense any intent to harm coming from him. He adds that nothing reacts more sensitively to that intention than an animal. With a serious look, he demonstrates his intention, and the pig gets scared at once. Frightened, the pig lets out a grunt and drools with fear from the man's killing intent. Chio-woo is impressed by the old man's ability to control his killing intent. He then asks if the elder is some kind of master. The protagonist says no. The old man explains that only when they reach the point of not exposing their intention will they be ready. Everyone is shocked by the butcher's display of skill and watches him intently. The employees are left with their mouths open, unable to believe what they just witnessed. The man says the most important thing is to finish it all in a single blow without the animal noticing. Chio-woo is impressed and says the animal passed without even being able to squeal. The old man then scolds his employees and tells them to hurry up, as the work has just begun. He hurries them along and tells them to drain the animal's blood as quickly as possible. The big guy comments on the old man's lungs and wonders if all of that is really necessary. A cleaner explains that the man has no children and is looking for someone to carry on his reputation. Chio-woo says he doesn't see anything special in butchering animals, but his boss scolds him. The protagonist says the old man dedicated his entire life to it and reminds him of Master Bolto. The big guy asks if it's the same thing, and the swordsman says it's not just his voice. He adds that Master Bolto's physique was also truly massive and imposing. Chio-woo laughs and says he's heard that a lot and that he probably favored him because of his size. The protagonist then makes a decision and says they will take over that butcher shop. He explains that they searched all day but couldn't find any place to work. The young man says he wants a job he can be proud of and that hiding the past is already a burden. He then approaches the old man and gets his attention to make his proposal. The protagonist says that he and his friend would like to apply for the job as well. The man laughs and says he supposes the job looked easy after seeing what he did. He then turns to the customers and apologizes but asks them to come back another time. The swordsman says no, and that they wouldn't think that after seeing his strike. He praises the old man, saying his skill truly conveyed the weight of his years. The man is silent for a moment, observing the young man with an intrigued look. He then tells him to wait a moment and takes them to a barn full of pigs. The old man then comes down the stairs with a pig following him closely for the test. The protagonist faces the animal with a serious look and prepares for the challenge ahead. The old man says that to take over the place, he needs to at least know how to do the butchering. The protagonist admits he has never done it before but is willing to try to learn. He then kneels beside the pig and prepares to perform the slaughter for the first time. With a quick and precise movement, he perfectly positions the pin on the animal's head. The old man is shocked by the young man's skill, as he made it look very easy. He then wonders how the young man managed to master something he spent his entire life learning. The man questions if he has really never learned to do that before in his life. The swordsman replies that he just followed what the old man did in the previous demonstration. He then turns to his friend and shouts for him to hurry up and hang the animal. Chio says he gets it and approaches to grab the pig, which is still eating. The elder is shocked again to see the strength of the big guy, who lifts the animal by himself. He thinks that to lift a pig of that size, it would take 3 or 4 men. The protagonist's friend then hangs the animal with chains and asks if they really need to use them. The old man is confused and asks what he means as he doesn't understand his question. Chio then climbs onto a wooden beam and prepares to do something impressive. The swordsman and the butcher are surprised and don't understand what he is planning to do. Suddenly, the big guy jumps from the beam with the pig in his arms and dispatches it in mid-air. He says that in the end, they just need to get the job done anyway. The old man is speechless at the scene and realizes that these two are not ordinary people. He then asks if they are martial artists, and the protagonist says they used to be. The man questions why they would want to do this kind of work if they are so skilled. With a determined look, the swordsman replies that they just want to try living normally. The elder says that if they dedicated themselves, they could find much better work out there. In his thoughts, he realizes that these young men have not had a very peaceful life. With a sigh, he regrets that there isn't much time to teach them everything he knows. The protagonist then bows and asks the old man to teach them the art of butchery well. With a confident smile, he says the man will not be disappointed with his choice. The scene then shifts to the roof of a house with a black cat observing the landscape. Suddenly, a brush with black ink falls to the ground and shatters into several pieces. A man with an intimidating appearance then asks if someone mentioned the Healing Sun Medical House. One of the men reports that the imperial court made a personal request to the medical house for the royalty. Yang O-jung finds it strange, as the doctors from the Healing Sun House wouldn't attack without reason. Dang Bake reveals that the Gaedong group was after the stalactite essence, and that's why they attacked. The man is shocked and furious to learn they were after such a valuable item. He complains that it's a waste to use an item that can't be bought even for 1,000 gold pieces. His companion then reveals that the item wasn't used and that the owner was someone else. The leader is surprised to learn that the owner was not from the Healing Sun Medical House. The man explains that they were pursuing this person when they came into conflict. Impatient, he asks who the owner of the stalactite essence is so he can go after them. His companion reveals that it is a man named Samajian who came from Shaxing to treat his sibling. With a wicked smile, the man says he didn't know that old pig had the essence. In his thoughts, he realizes that this is a unique opportunity to cure his clan's disease. He then orders his men to use all necessary means to bring him the item. At the butcher shop, the protagonist begins to learn the art of cutting meat from the old master. The elder is amazed by the young man's skill and praises him for his rapid progress. He says the young man is incredible and that there's nothing more he can teach him. The swordsman thanks him and says it's all thanks to the old master's proper instruction. The man says it is he who is grateful, as he dedicated his entire life to that craft. He hoped that his art would be preserved and not disappear with time. The old man then thanks the young man, for now his wish has been fulfilled, and he can rest in peace. The protagonist says that he is the one who should be grateful, as he now has a place to settle down. Chio-woo complains that they could have sold the meat roughly instead of doing so much work. He then asks his boss if he really needs to learn how to do that too. The old man says not to give him a knife and to let him do only the manual labor. The protagonist agrees, saying his skill in butchering animals is already enough. The big guy celebrates because the old man finally said something sensible for the first time. The scene then shows the three working together at the butcher shop while drinking and talking. Chio-woo tells his boss that knives are not his thing and that he prefers heavy lifting. The swordsman then tells him to do as he pleases, and his friend thanks him with a smile. The big guy offers a drink to the old man, who stares at him with a serious and suspicious look. The protagonist slaps his friend's hand and tells him to stop talking nonsense. The big guy insists and says that even if it's time to go, a drink won't hurt. The old man then gives in and says he can't let a day like today pass without a drink. Hein observes the scene with a serious and worried look about what is happening. He then turns to the butcher's shop and says to himself that they have really shaken things up. Suddenly, his sister appears and asks when he arrived, as she hadn't seen him. Hein scolds her for working and says she needs to rest because of her health. He reveals that their older brother took over the butcher shop and that she already knew about it. The young woman tells him to stop cleaning as their brother worked hard to get the place. Hyan then asks if business is going well, but the protagonist says not yet. He explains that it's only been a few days since the old owner passed, and that it's unreasonable to expect success. His sister says that he went to sleep peacefully on the night their brother took over the butcher's shop. The protagonist asks when she arrived and says he was worried about her being late. Hyan says everything is fine and that he didn't get into any accidents on the way. He comments that the escort run was as fast as lightning, and the protagonist smiles at the news. The young man says he never imagined he would take over a butcher shop of all things. His brother is worried because it's a very famous butcher shop and the old owner was something else. He warns that if their skills fall short, they will be endlessly cursed. But the protagonist tells him not to worry, as he is confident and they will work hard. Suddenly he comes running and shouting for his brother with urgent news. The young man asks what happened and what made him so agitated. Ho runs in, shouting that they're here, but his brother grabs him by the ear. The boy screams in pain as his brother pulls him into the butcher shop forcefully. Wu tells him to stop talking nonsense and explain what's happening to cause such a commotion. The big guy threatens him by showing his fist, and the young man begs him to let go. Ho says he found the doctor sent by someone and that he is waiting for them. He reveals that the doctor has arrived in Hangzhou and told them to bring the youngest along. Upon hearing the news, the young woman has a look of hope and anxiety on her face. The protagonist thinks they should go right now and takes off his work apron. The scene then takes us back to the clinic where they wait for the doctor from the main family. The doctor greets them and says he was waiting for them at the clinic. The protagonist apologizes for the rush and says they ran as soon as they got the message. But the doctor says the doctor from the main family also wanted to see the patient as soon as possible. He then introduces the woman who is with him in the forest and says she is Wang Yang. The swordsman is shocked to see the woman who helped them escape from the bandits again. She smiles and comments on the coincidence of meeting again in such a way. Her guards then realize that they now understand why those scoundrels attacked them. The doctor is confused and asks if they have met before, as he doesn't know the story. The protagonist explains that they received help from her when they went to get the stone oil. The doctor is surprised and says that fate truly works in mysterious ways. The young man says he has always regretted leaving in a hurry without properly thanking her. But the woman tells him not to worry, as they were in a hurry to get the item. The swordsman then introduces his sister to her and says she will be the one examining her. Gina introduces herself and says she is eagerly awaiting the doctor's help for her illness. The woman praises her, saying she is as beautiful as a fairy and that she should be the one asking for cooperation. She explains that the illness is not something a doctor can cure alone and that they need to fight together. She then asks everyone to leave for a moment so she can examine the young woman. Half an hour later, the men wait outside the room, anxious for the result. Wu asks why it's taking so long, and the protagonist remains silent, worried. Suddenly, the door opens, and the doctor appears to give the news about Gina's condition. The protagonist asks how she is, and the woman reveals that she believes she has identified the illness. She explains that before leaving the main family, a patient with the same symptoms appeared. The doctor reveals that the young woman was born with the celestial divine veins of yin, not the meridians. She says that if she hadn't found the records in the archives, she would have never identified the condition. Wu asks if the illness can be cured, but the doctor cannot give an answer. She explains that the other patient had already missed the right time for treatment. The big guy then asks what happened to the patient from the records and if he survived. The woman is silent for a moment with a serious and worried look on her face. The protagonist stands outside the room and wonders if everything will be okay. Finally, the scene ends with the young man sitting and anxiously waiting for the final result. One of the brothers asks when they will have the results, but Samajian says it hasn't even been 10 minutes. The protagonist and Chil, who wait in silence, while the swordsman looks very worried. In his gaze, we see the affliction and anguish he is feeling in that moment of waiting. The doctor then comes out of the room with a serious expression on her face, without saying a word. Seeing her face, the young man quickly concludes that his sister's treatment has unfortunately failed. The woman then confirms his suspicion and says the treatment didn't work, and he asks why. She explains that the yin energy had already spread throughout the girl's body, rendering the medicines useless. Furthermore, her condition is much more powerful and critical than other similar illnesses. The other doctor is shocked, as it is already rare for someone with a similar condition to live past 18 years. The doctor reveals that the other patient only lived until 21 because of the pure blue stone oil. Our hero is disappointed to learn that even with the medicine, the other girl did not survive. But the doctor says that if the main family's acupuncture had been used, the situation would be different. Samajian then begs her to take good care of his sister, as she is very precious to him. The woman is silent for a moment with a thoughtful look on her face after hearing the request. The swordsman tries to meditate to calm himself, but his mind can't stop thinking about the worst. He wonders what he will do if something goes wrong and how he can save his sister. Wu complains that the wait feels like 2 hours, while Ho starts to cough beside him. Suddenly, the young man is startled as he hears something approaching them in the darkness. His friend asks what it was, and the protagonist confirms that there is someone else there with them. With a serious look, the swordsman says it seems they have an unexpected visitor. With that, he and his companion stand up and look toward a nearby bamboo forest. The place is covered in a dense fog that makes it difficult to see and hides what is to come. Amid the fog, several mysterious men are hidden, waiting for the right moment to attack. One of the men tells his leader that the central guard is coming and they need to hurry. The group's leader reveals that their main objective is the pure blue stone oil they took. He then calls for the leader of Squad 3, who immediately responds to his call. The man orders them not to let anyone escape and to protect the front gate first. With the orders given, the henchmen charge all at once to start the surprise attack. But Chiyo-woo suddenly appears and calls them scoundrels with a confident smile on his face. The men are shocked by the big guy's sudden appearance and stop in their tracks. With a quick move, the big guy blocks an enemy's attack with his hand. The group's leader is shocked by Chiyo-woo's strength and can't believe what he's seeing. The protagonist's friend then asks who the heck they are and why they are attacking them. He even teases them, saying they are a bunch of idiots dressed in the same way. In his thoughts, the enemy realizes that the big guy is an incredible master to cause so much damage. But he also notices that this man doesn't look like the Sama Jian they're looking for. With that, he says he will go after the protagonist and leaves his subordinate to deal with Chiyo-woo. The man then charges forward at an incredible speed, leaving a trail of dust behind. Chiyo-woo is startled by the enemy's speed and looks up, surprised by what he sees. The group's leader leaps over him, and the big guy admits that the guy is very fast. One of the henchmen tells him not to worry, as they won't stop their boss at all. Chiyo-woo is shocked to see that the man used a lightness skill to move so fast. The enemy asks if he is worried about his boss, but the big guy just smiles at the taunt. He then challenges him to a bet on who will fall first, his boss or his own. The henchman gets annoyed with the man's audacity and says his arrogance reaches the heavens. Chiyo-woo calls them to fight and tells them to stop stalling and come at him already. With that, the enemies charge all at once, ready to attack the big guy without mercy. The protagonist's friend is not intimidated and prepares to face them all at the same time. With a confident smile, he faces his adversaries as they leap toward him. In the blink of an eye, a large explosion of energy occurs, sending everyone flying. The group's leader turns upon hearing the noise and is surprised by what is happening. In his thoughts, he says that, as expected, his enemy seems to be in trouble. He then decides he needs to hurry to get the item and then go back to help his men. Suddenly, the protagonist appears behind him and asks what he is thinking about so deeply. The man is startled and wonders how the young man got there with him noticing his presence. Sama Jian then questions him about where he came from and what he came to do in that place. The enemy realizes that this must be the protagonist, that they are two monsters, not butchers. Seeing that the man won't answer, the swordsman charges toward him to strike first. With a war cry, the enemy attacks with his sword, but the young man prepares to defend himself. The protagonist then wears a mask and blocks the attack with red energy in his hand. With eyes glowing with rage, the man shouts furiously at the protagonist. A high-speed exchange of blows occurs between the two warriors amidst the forest. Sama Jian then stops his enemy's blade with just one hand, leaving him shocked. The man is shocked, as he didn't expect this display of strength from the young man. With that, he easily breaks the opponent's sword and throws him back to the ground. The group's leader screams in pain and frustration with his imminent defeat and no chance to fight back. The swordsman then approaches his defeated enemy to finish the fight once and for all. Sama Jian then questions him about the reason for his visit and what he wants there. The man is terrified upon realizing that the young man knows about the pure blue stone oil. The protagonist confirms they came for the item and asks how they found out about it. In his thoughts, the enemy realizes there is no escape and that this is his end. The swordsman then says he will spare his life if he answers all his questions. Suddenly, the protagonist is startled as he realizes the man is about to do something. The man then bites something in his mouth and falls to the ground, lifeless before the young man. The protagonist realizes he eliminated himself using a hidden poison so as not to reveal anything. He then thinks that he should have told his friend to leave some of them alive for questioning. Chiyo-woo arrives and asks if the fight is already over, as he heard a strange noise. Sama Jian questions if he eliminated everyone, and his friend confirms with a victorious smile. The protagonist is silent for a moment with a look of disapproval on his face. In his thoughts, he laments, saying he shouldn't have sent his friend into the fight. At that moment, we see the energy of the two friends emanating from their bodies intimidatingly. The big guy notices his boss's anger, and his eyes begin to glow with a blue light. With a furious look, the protagonist tells Chiyo-woo to apologize immediately for what he did. The doctor is impressed by the power she felt coming from the two men outside. With that, Chiyo-woo bows and apologizes for making a mistake out of frustration. The swordsman also apologizes on behalf of his younger brother for the mistake he made. The doctor says he doesn't need to apologize, as she is the one who should be doing so to them. She explains that she cannot rule out the possibility of a relapse in his sister's future. The other doctor praises her, saying her acupuncture was perfect and that she did her best. He laments that the young woman's symptoms are more cruel than other similar illnesses. The protagonist is confused and asks what he means by a miscalculation. The other doctor reveals that he overestimated the effectiveness of the stalactite milk for the treatment. He explains that the milk was not enough to deal with the young woman's powerful yin qi. Chiyo-woo gets annoyed and questions what level of medicine is needed if even that wasn't enough. The doctor corrects him and says that they actually need a medicine with a different use. She explains that there are spiritual medicines with extreme energies of yin or yang. Thus, our hero understands that Gina's illness needs something exactly like that. The swordsman then asks what kind of medicine they need to cure his sister. The doctor reveals that the name of the item is the Great Revitalizing Pill of Shaolin. The scene then shifts to the butcher shop, where the two friends are talking and eating. Chio-woo asks if his boss is going to rob them, and the protagonist questions where. The big guy replies that he's obviously talking about the Shaolin Temple and stares at him. But the young man says he will think about it calmly, as his sister has improved for now. His friend insists that he will go sooner or later, but our hero denies it with a no. The young man says that Ms. Wong assured him she will be fine for a while, and there's no rush. He adds that it hasn't been long since he returned, and wants to stay with his siblings. The swordsman says the journey is long, and that he needs to establish the butcher shop first. His friend understands that if both of them go to the temple, there will be no one to take care of the business. The young man is confused and asks who they are going to teach the art of butchery to. Chio-woo replies that it will be Hyen and Ho, as one of them is already halfway there. With that, their trip to the temple will be postponed till the two brothers can take care of the butcher's shop. He says Hyen is hardworking, but Ho is a problem, and suddenly the young man appears running. Ho then runs toward the butcher's shop, desperately shouting for his older brother. The protagonist tells him to calm down and asks what happened to cause such an alarm. Desperate, the boy reveals the tragic news that his second brother has been kidnapped. Sama-jeon is shocked by the news and can't believe what he just heard. Back in the forest, Chio-woo asks if the guy is gone, and his boss confirms that he is. The big guy says his attention was elsewhere, so it's natural that he didn't see it. The young man says it won't happen again, as the stalactite milk is no longer with them. But his friend looks at the body on the ground and wonders what they will do if the enemies return. The protagonist points to the body and says they will end up the same way if they come back here. Chio-woo laughs and says it's not so bad, as it will bring some vitality to their boring lives. The swordsman questions if he wants to see more conflict after everything they've been through together. The big guy laughs awkwardly and says that's not exactly what he meant by his words. He then reveals that he hates having his peaceful life interrupted, and his friend agrees with him. The young man tells him to stop being noisy and clean up the mess, but his friend asks if he has to do it alone. The protagonist questions who made the mess and says he is going ahead to the clinic. Alone in the forest, the big guy wonders when he will be able to finish all that work. Back at the clinic, he finally finishes cleaning and says with relief that his work is done. The protagonist covers his nose upon smelling a strange scent coming from his friend who just arrived. He asks if his friend set the forest on fire, but the big guy says there was a lot of mess. Chio-woo is worried about the delay, but his boss calms him down, saying everything will be fine. He tells his friend to be quiet, as the immortal healer's family is involved in the case. At that moment, the door opens, and the doctor comes out of the room looking exhausted and worried. The swordsman then approaches him and eagerly asks how his sister's treatment went. The doctor reveals that the golden needle acupuncture finished well, and her condition has improved a lot. Upon hearing the news, the two friends are shocked and happy with the result of the treatment. Emotionally, the protagonist holds the doctor's hands and thanks him for saving his sister. The man then invites them in so he can give a more detailed explanation. Inside, the doctor looks very tired and sweaty after performing the complex procedure. The swordsman notices that something is wrong in the air and has a serious look. She explains that the bad smell is because of the murky chew that was expelled from the young woman's body. Her guards help her up, but she says it's not that big of a deal and that she's fine. The woman apologizes as they couldn't achieve a complete cure for the illness. The young man is confused as the other doctor said her condition had improved a lot. The doctor then confirms that she has improved a lot and is healthier than before the treatment. But she adds that unfortunately they couldn't cure her completely and apologizes. The protagonist says no and that he heard the technique could cause harm to the doctor as well. The doctor reveals that it was a lucky opportunity to encounter such a rare illness. And she adds that treating patients is the duty and principle of a true doctor. Chio-woo is silent with a serious look on his face as he processes the doctor's information. The big guy then says he had a bad feeling ever since he heard the treatment failed. The doctor's guards get annoyed with the situation and glare at the two with suspicion. Sama-jeon tells his friend to stop, but the big guy says that in the end it was all just talk. With a sarcastic smile, he mocks the doctor and says if it was luck, then good for her. The guards get annoyed with the insult and shout at him for daring to speak to their lady like that. His eyes glow with a blue light, and he asks if he happened to say anything wrong. A strong pressure emanates from the big guy and throws the guards back with incredible force. The doctor is shocked by the display of power and can't believe what she is seeing. The other doctor is also startled by the scene and is paralyzed with fear in the situation. Back at the butcher shop, the swordsman asks what he means by kidnapped, not understanding anything. Ho explains that he followed an escort agency on a mission and was taken by bandits. Chio-woo is furious with the news and says those scoundrels have no fear at all. The protagonist then decides they need to go to the escort agency first to investigate. The scene then takes us to the Juhei escort agency, a large and busy place. Arriving there, the three come across the agency building where their brother worked as a porter. They then enter the place, which is full of people and employees working non-stop. A crowd of residents gathers to ask about the workers who were taken. They question what is happening and what kind of negotiations are being made to save them. One of the employees says the agency considers the lives of the hostages as the top priority. He asks everyone to trust and wait a little, as they will ensure everyone returns safely. Ho says those are just formal answers and decides they need to go ask directly. He then questions if they are considering other methods, like sending a rescue team. The young man introduces himself as Sama-ho and says his older brother Hyen was taken prisoner. The The man apologizes and says their intention is to negotiate as much as possible to resolve the situation. He then turns to the crowd and says they are doing the impossible to get everyone back. After the speech, the man turns and enters a room to get away from the crowd of residents. Ho says the guy has no sincerity and that the story seems suspicious somehow. He then finds a colleague of his brother named Jangseong and calls him over to talk. The young man questions if they are really negotiating as the man told the crowd. Hyen's colleague tries to calm Ho down, saying the negotiations are going well and that he should wait. But Ho doesn't believe him and pulls him into a corner so they can talk alone. Seeing the scene, the protagonist tells his friend that they should also go after the two to listen. In a more secluded place, Ho tells him to stop stalling and tell him how the situation really is. The young man then reveals that the bandits are asking for an absurd amount of money for the ransom. Ho asks how much they want, and his brother's colleague reveals it is 100 gold coins. The young man is completely shocked by the revelation, as it is an impossible amount for them. His friend is also startled and confirms that they really asked for 100 gold coins. At that moment, the swordsman and his friend appear, and the young man explains that their sister passed out. Worried, he asks what happened to Gina and Chio, who says she was shocked by something. The protagonist then confirms that she is fine now, so as not to worry his brother's friend. Upon hearing the news, the young man lets out a sigh of relief, knowing she is out of danger. The big guy then wonders where a small agency like that would get so much money. But Hyen's colleague says the agency is quite large for the region, and not that small. Chio grabs him and asks if they are planning to send a rescue team to save them. The young man is shocked and asks how he knows, since everyone is keeping it a secret. The protagonist's friend says the atmosphere felt like it and questions if it's possible with just them. The young man reveals they are going to ask for help from the surrounding areas and have already sent people to various places. However, the big guy doubts it will work, as the bandits must be expecting this reaction from them. The swordsman wonders which bandits did this, as he knows there is a line between agencies. Hyen's colleague says they haven't learned their lesson even after their fortress was destroyed. Hearing this, the protagonist is surprised and wonders what fortress he mentioned. He then reveals it was the camp of the Golden Tiger bandits that was wiped out a while ago. The young man adds that everyone was very happy when the fortress was destroyed. With a serious look, the swordsman questions if the bandits' camp was rebuilt by any chance. The young man then reveals the news that the leader who had left the fortress has finally returned. The protagonist is silent for a moment with a serious and thoughtful look on his face. He then turns to his younger brother and calls him by name to give him an order. The young man says he left Gina with the neighbor and asks him to take care of her, but Ho asks where he is going. The swordsman replies that he needs to visit a place, but his brother is confused by the situation. Chio calms Ho down, saying they have connections and will find a way to save Hyen. The scene then shifts to the office of the head of the Juhei escort agency, a very tidy place. Inside, the agency head looks shocked and asks if the news he received is true. His subordinate confirms that it is and that the contact came from the Blaze escort agency for sure. The man is very happy with the news and says that this is truly a help from the heavens. He reveals that the warriors of the Nam Gung clan are helping and have already left for the camp. The head remembers that the Blaze agency was also attacked by those same bandits before them. With that, he says they need to hurry as they have people to save and goes to prepare. The scene then takes us to a mountain covered in a dense and quite mysterious fog. There we see the camp of the Golden Tiger bandits, which has been rebuilt and is well guarded. Inside the place is the leader Nog Juk, who has returned and is eating and drinking peacefully. He then asks if there has been any reaction from the agency and what part of the hostages they have already sent. His subordinate then approaches and reveals that this is the 4th time they have done this. The leader gets annoyed and wonders how there has been no response after all that. But the henchman reveals that the escort agency actually made them a proposal. He explains that they don't have all the money now but can pay half the ransom. Interested in the proposal, the leader takes a sip of his drink and waits for the rest of the offer. In return, they want half of the prisoners to be released and promise to pay the rest later. The man gets annoyed as his reputation was tarnished with the destruction of the camp and asks about the culprit. His henchman says they are mobilizing all the power of the guards, but haven't found him yet. Furious with the situation, the leader crushes the bottle in his hand with incredible and frightening force. He says he wants to find the culprit personally, but that rebuilding the camp is the priority. He reveals that he got support from the patrol and the elders and that he needs to take advantage of it. The leader then orders his man to move up the schedule and send the parts of the hostages to them. Suddenly, a mysterious man appears and suggests that next time they send the heads. The group's leader turns with a surprised and annoyed look at the newcomer's arrival. The man warns him that if he is too strong, the retaliation will be severe and that clans will attack them. With a wicked smile on his face, the newcomer says that is exactly what he wants. He boasts that the elders and the supreme masters are with them and that there is no problem. 2 other men comment that unless the masters of the Imperial Army show up, there will be no surprises. Nogjuk is silent for a moment and finally agrees with the man's suggestion. He then orders his henchmen to remove the heads of the hostages and send them immediately to the agency. Suddenly, a large explosion occurs and destroys part of the bandits' fortress. The group's leader turns, shocked by the noise, and can't believe what is happening. The mysterious man is then thrown far away by the force of the explosion that happened there. Chio Wu appears amidst the smoke and complains about the restoration of the destroyed place. The leader points at them and asks if by any chance they are the rescue team from the agency. The mysterious man says they are not the rescue team and wonders who they are. The protagonist says they don't need to be curious and asks who the leader of the camp is. With a wicked smile, the newcomer asks what will happen if he is the leader. Samajian then glares at him with a cold look and says that in that case, he will have to be dealt with. Furious with the young man's audacity, the bandit leader draws his sword to attack. But the mysterious man stops him and says to wait as he wants to take care of it. He then asks the leader to hand the two over to him, as the elders are bored. The bandit chief agrees to the request and sheathes his sword again. The elders then approach with a smile on their faces, as they were getting bored. Chill. Wu tells his boss to take care of the bandit leader while he takes care of the rest of the trash. The swordsman asks if he's not just saying that because he wants to fight and his friend agrees. The four elders then line up in front of the big guy for the upcoming confrontation. Chill Wu then charges toward them with a confident smile on his face. He then lands a powerful punch on one of the elders, who prepares to defend himself. The old man uses his pipe to block the big guy's attack as he approaches him. The blow hits the pipe dead on, and a large wave of energy spreads through the place. The elder is shocked by the force of the punch he received from the young warrior before him. With that, he is thrown back but manages to stay on his feet after that attack. In his thoughts, the old man wonders how he blocked his attack with just body Chui. He then prepares to fight seriously, and a red aura emanates from his body. Chiol Wu praises him and says he is an interesting old man, and that now he will fight seriously. The elder is shocked by the young man's composure even after seeing his power. The big guy then faces him with a confident smile and challenges him to attack first. Furious with the challenge, the elder shouts at the young man and charges toward him to attack. He then leaps into the air and tries to land a blow on his opponent, who prepares to defend himself. A blue aura emanates from the big guy's body as the old man's attack approaches him. With a wicked smile, the elder believes his attack will hit his opponent dead on. But to his surprise, the pipe breaks upon contact with Chiol Wu's aura. The old man is shocked and cannot believe his weapon was destroyed so easily. With that, the big guy takes advantage of the opening and lands a powerful punch on the elder's face. The force of the blow is so great that one of the other men is startled to see the scene. He then runs to catch his companion who was thrown back by the impact. Worried, the man asks if he is okay and what the heck that was that happened. Fallen on the ground, the elder warns him to be careful, as that man is no ordinary opponent. In his thoughts, the other man wonders what kind of monster he is to defeat a master. Chiol Wu gets annoyed as his body Q is pierced during the exchange of blows. He then asks his boss if his skill has diminished or if the old man is very strong. The big guy gets frustrated and says he's rusty and that practicing on pigs is not enough. With a determined look, he turns and challenges all the enemies to come at him at once. The man then says he is not an opponent they can face with pride and creates an opening. Several henchmen suddenly appear and prepare to attack the big guy altogether. The other elder then charges toward Chiol Wu to attack him head on with everything. With a serious look, the protagonist's friend prepares for the upcoming confrontation. He then lands a powerful punch on his opponent's face, who is caught by surprise. The blow is so strong that it shatters the wooden floor and throws the elder far away with the impact. The mysterious man then orders all the henchmen to attack at the same time without hesitation. The enemies surround the big guy and attack him with their swords, but he is not shaken. With a confident smile, he calls them annoying flies and prepares to counterattack. One of the men shouts for his companions to dodge the upcoming attack from the enemy. Chiol Wu then unleashes a large wave of blue energy that throws all the henchmen far away. The enemies scream in pain as they are hit by the big guy's explosion of power. The mysterious man is shocked by the scene and cannot believe what he just saw. But even after all that, he doesn't give up, and the big guy praises his fighting spirit. The elder shouts at the big guy and says he admits he is strong, but that he won't go down alone. He then charges toward Chiol Wu with a determined look on his face, ready to attack. A fiery aura emanates from his body, and he prepares to use all his power at once. But the protagonist's friend says that is just an old man's wishful thinking. He then charges forward at an incredible speed, leaving a trail of dust behind. A large explosion occurs and a wave of blue energy spreads throughout the entire area. The elder coughs and is thrown back by the force of the blow he received from the big guy. With a powerful attack, Chiol Wu hits him squarely and throws him to the ground with incredible force. The mysterious man is shocked to see the scene and cannot believe what happened. The force of the blow is so great that the wooden floor breaks with the impact of the body. The enemy then uses one of his henchmen as a shield to protect himself from the big guy's attack. Desperate, he begs for his life and asks the young man to wait a second before attacking. He reveals that his father is the high leader of the 18 branches of the Green Forest to try to save himself. But Chiol Wu doesn't care and hits him with a precise blow that throws him against a pillar. The big guy then says that sometimes this kind of fun is cool and throws the body to the ground. He tells his boss that the fight is over, and the protagonist says there's only one enemy left. With a cold look, the swordsman faces the bandit leader and says that now it's his turn. In his thoughts, the man realizes his opponent defeated the masters in an instant. He decides he needs to sacrifice his guards and flee to be able to fight another day and survive. The protagonist then reveals that they were the ones who destroyed the camp the first time. The bandit leader is shocked by the revelation and cannot believe what he heard. With eyes glowing with rage, he faces the young man and promises to finish him. Furious with the revelation, the man shouts that he will end the protagonist's time because of this. The scene then shifts to a dense forest where a group of warriors walks through the woods. We then see that they are the rescue team that was sent to save the hostages from the bandits. One of the men complains about the thorns and vines that are blocking their path. The team leader apologizes and explains that to avoid the enemy's eyes, the path is difficult. Another man comforts him, telling him not to worry as he is still young and inexperienced. He then turns to his men and reminds them to keep the prisoners' safety in mind. The leader orders them not to act recklessly and put them in danger, and everyone agrees. The rescue team leader thinks for a moment and decides to continue moving forward. He then tells his men to keep moving, but suddenly he stops and looks back. His nephew asks what happened and why he suddenly stopped in the middle of the path. The man then reveals that a fight has started just ahead of them in the forest, and the young man is surprised. He says it seems the fight is already over, and his nephew wonders if another group acted first. The leader says he doesn't know, but they need to hurry to get to the location as fast as possible. Back at the fortress, the bandit leader charges toward the protagonist to attack him. A high-speed exchange of blows occurs between the two warriors who face each other. The swordsman dodges all of his opponent's attacks with incredible and precise speed. Furious, the man asks if he is just going to keep dodging his blows without fighting back. The young man then questions if he is really indignant about the current situation he is in. Samajion asks if he is indignant because his home is being destroyed at that moment. The leader says yes, because he built that fortress with his entire life and will get his revenge. The swordsman then questions if he thinks it's a waste to lose a place that oppresses the weak. The man says that's what bandits do and asks what that has to do with the young man. With a quick move, the protagonist lands a powerful punch on his enemy's face. The blow is so strong that it throws him back and makes him fall to the ground with a great impact. The wooden floor breaks with the force of the man's fall, who screams in pain from the attack. With a cold look, our hero approaches and asks what that has to do with him. He then reveals that 12 years ago, he was captured and sold like cattle to the demonic cult. The bandit leader screams in pain as the young man attacks him again with a powerful blow. The protagonist says he was treated worse than a beast and crossed the line between life and its end. He reveals that his family survived in misery and his mother ended up passing away because of it. With a final blow, the swordsman unleashes all his anger on his enemy without mercy. He then kicks his adversary away with incredible force and throws him to the ground. The young man says with sadness that he couldn't be with his mother in her final moments because of him. Fallen on the ground, the bandit leader can't believe that one of his prisoners survived. The protagonist reveals that as if that wasn't enough, he took his younger sister again. Desperate, the man begs for his life and says he was wrong and won't do it again. But the swordsman says no, and that he will make him beg to be finished once and for all. The protagonist tells him to reveal where the prisoners are and promises to let him go in peace. He then uses a powerful technique and a blue aura emanates from his body intimidatingly. His eyes glow and a large amount of energy accumulates in his hand, ready for the attack. The bandit leader screams in pain as he is hit by the swordsman's technique. With a cold look, our hero continues to torment his enemy without any mercy. Suddenly, the rescue team arrives, and the leader shouts for the protagonist to stop what he's doing. The swordsman turns, surprised as he didn't expect anyone else to show up at that moment. He then tells his friend to take care of the old man who just arrived, as he is busy. With a confident smile, Chio-woo says it will be a pleasure and prepares for the fight. The rescue team leader advances with his sword in hand and says he told him to stop. But the big guy challenges him to try to make him stop and charges toward him for the attack. The man then attacks with red energy, but his opponent is not intimidated by the blow. He then uses blue energy to easily defend against his adversary's attack. A large explosion of energy occurs when the two blows clash in the air. The rescue team leader is thrown back by the force of the explosion's impact. He then manages to recompose himself in the air and uses several sword techniques to defend himself. In his thoughts, the man wonders how his sword Chu is deflected so easily. Chio-woo praises him for dodging the attack and says he's not bad for an old man. The rescue team leader recognizes the fallen elder and realizes he is Peng Yu-sang. He knows the man is cruel but that his skill is very great, and he is surprised. With that, he decides he needs to take the fight seriously and prepares to use all his power. A blue aura emanates from his body, and he prepares to use his most powerful technique. The big guy realizes he is no ordinary old man and says that now he can fight seriously. The two then face each other with a serious look and prepare for the upcoming confrontation. A high-speed exchange of blows occurs between the two warriors amidst the smoke. Chio-woo manages to dodge his opponent's attacks with incredible and precise speed. The rescue team leader prepares for a final attack and says he won't dodge. He then charges with his sword in hand, but the big guy prepares to counter-attack. With a quick move, the man manages to dodge his adversary's punch at the last second. But even so, he is grazed and coughs from the force of the blow he received. He wonders how that is possible, as he thought he could cause at least a serious injury. With a small scratch on his face, the big guy wipes the blood that slowly drips from his face. With a confident smile, he says it's been a while since he saw that, and a red aura surrounds him. The other men are shocked as he took the elder's final blow and only got a scratch. The leader's nephew then shouts for his men to protect his great uncle at all costs. With that, all the warriors prepare to attack the big guy to protect their master. Chio-woo mocks them, saying it's always the unskilled ones who try to win with numbers. The leader shouts for his men to retreat as the fight is not over yet and they should leave. His nephew questions his decision, but he doesn't want his men to get hurt. The man tells them to retreat, as he doesn't want the honor of the Nangang clan to be tarnished. The big guy agrees and says that's better and prepares for the next move. Suddenly, the protagonist calls him and stops him from advancing, holding the bandit leader. Chio Wu is confused and asks what happened for his boss to have that attitude. He then points to his boss's face, which has a scar on his left eye. The rescue team and the protagonist face each other in silence for a moment amidst the smoke. The swordsman then asks if they are from the Nangang clan, and a man with a scar appears.